Alright, in this video, I want to talk a bit about Daniel, the book of Daniel, mainly focused on chapter 7 where it mentions these four beasts here. But I also want to maybe talk a little bit about Daniel chapter 2 with the statue. And to start off, a little bit about Daniel chapter 3, where it's after Daniel interprets Nebuchadnezzar's dream after he tells him what his dream is. And Nebuchadnezzar actually bows down and worships Daniel. Then in chapter 3 there, Nebuchadnezzar tries to make a completely golden statue for everybody to worship. And we take Nebuchadnezzar to be an example of the Antichrist getting people to worship the beast, right? Making an image to the beast. And that makes sense. But Daniel is not part of the story. His friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused to bow. Why didn't Daniel refuse to bow? People speculate and say that, oh, he wasn't there, or something along those lines. My thought has always been that Daniel couldn't justifiably say anything because he allowed Nebuchadnezzar to bow to him and worship him. So how could he stand up and say, hey, you can't bow down and worship the statue? Not only that, I think that the statue might have actually been not of Nebuchadnezzar, but of Daniel. I can't say that for sure, bit of speculation there, but we see through the scriptures that the Antichrist is probably going to be a Jew. Daniel, a Jew, right? Antichrist probably of Judah, the tribe of Judah. Daniel was of the tribe of Judah. He was able to tell the king of Babylon the dream and the interpretation and got worshipped. And the false prophet is the one that actually sets up the image to the beast. Nebuchadnezzar seems to be a depiction of the false prophet, which kind of diverts everybody's interpretation of the book of Daniel, even my own there. So when you look at the statue in Daniel, Daniel chapter 2, where it has a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, legs of iron, and then feet of partly iron, partly clay. Those represent kingdoms over time. Starts with Babylon as a head of gold. Is taken over by Medo-Persia, which is the silver chest and arms. Then is taken over by Greece, the belly and thighs of brass. Then Rome, the legs of iron. And then ends with iron and clay being mixed together. So if you're going to look at who Babylon represents, he represents a false prophet setting up the image to the beast. And that would tie us to Rome at the end being iron, makes it to the end and is in the place, the seat of Babylon. And Rome now, that empire, is the Roman Catholic Church, where it has mixed the Babylonian religion with Judaism and Christianity, creating Catholicism. So we can see from looking at that the king, which would be the Roman pontiff or the pope, who is actually king of the city-state of the Vatican, would be the false prophet to make the image in this interpretation. And the image would be Israel. Israel would be the image everybody is to worship, which makes a whole lot of sense if you want to pretend to be Jesus. How so? Well, the prophecies in the Old Testament of the Messiah coming depict him as coming as king, reigning in Jerusalem over Israel as the head of the nations, right? That's why the Jews rejected Jesus when he first showed up, because he came as a meek, jobless, homeless guy, and he came into Jerusalem riding on a donkey claiming to be king. And they were fully expecting him to overthrow the Romans and establish Israel as the head of the nations. But he didn't, so they rejected him. So this false Messiah who wants to pretend to be the actual Messiah, Jesus Christ, I don't know if he's going to take on that same name, but he's going to claim to be the Jewish Messiah, would do that. He would try to establish Israel as the head of the nations. So we see that that's probably going to be some Roman leader, probably after economic collapse, currency being devalued, maybe World War III, since every time there's a world war, Israel is elevated. So this seems to be what's going to happen. And then this false prophet's going to try to get the world to end up worshiping Israel, setting up Israel as the head of the nations. And the nations are going to be, of course, mixed, whether they follow along with that or not. But we see that that's going to be this false millennial kingdom of Christ. And a lot of people are going to fall for it because they're ignorant. They don't love the truth. They rejected it. So God's going to give them over to a strong delusion to believe a lie. And they're going to follow along with that. And the Antichrist is probably going to be someone like a Daniel figure. But there's a whole lot more to it as we look here at these beasts. Because we know the Antichrist in Revelation is referred to as beast. So when we look at this, in Daniel chapter 7, we have beasts mentioned in order of a lion, a bear, a four-headed leopard, and an undescript beast, as we see here, is depicted as a dragon, dinosaur-like creature, what a lot of people depict it as. But I'm going to throw out there that this is not described because I think this beast is actually extraterrestrial, alien, as in the fallen angels. And I'll explain why I say that. But first I have to start with the lion. The lion, representing a Medo-Persian empire, also represents, during the church age, England, who also ended up restoring Israel as a nation, just like Medo-Persia ended up restoring Jerusalem and Israel. So then what follows? Well, we have Greece, which would actually be Russia, because after World War II, England kind of lost its power and its wings were taken, the wings of an eagle. And when we read Revelation chapter 12, we read about the woman fleeing from the dragon on the wings of a great eagle, and they're given the wings of a great eagle. So we see that the wings that belonged to England when it was a strong nation have been plucked and seem to have been given to Israel. And what came after World War II that actually had a lot of power and influence was Russia. And I was trying to figure out the three ribs. So I was looking in the scriptures and looked for ribs. And there's only two places ribs are mentioned. You can find where the singular rib is mentioned, where it mentions the fifth rib, where somebody was actually pierced under the fifth rib or right above the fifth rib to kill the person. That's mentioned a few times. But there's only two places ribs are mentioned. It mentioned in Daniel chapter 7, referring to this beast holding three ribs in its mouth. And in Genesis chapter 2, where it talks about one of Adam's ribs being taken to form Eve. So I was thinking that this probably has to do with all the people Russia killed. And they were Christians for the most part. People look at the Holocaust and they're like 6 million Jews killed by the Nazis, but there's numbers of 50 plus million killed by Russia around the same time, but that's not mentioned for some reason. And that could be what that is right there, the three ribs. Now, what would be after Russia then? Well, America. As this represents Medo-Persia, England, this would be Greece/Russia. The next kingdom that ended up conquering Greece was Rome, and that same connection is to the United States. As Rome started as a republic, so did the United States. Rome ended up becoming a democracy and falling. America becoming a democracy and falling. And you may be wondering, well, then why is it described as a four-headed, four-winged leopard? And I was like, you know what? At first I was like, I don't get it. I can get the leopard a bit, as it is yellow with black spots and a white belly. That can depict the mixture of the nations of Shem, Ham, Japheth, where Ham representing the African people. You got yellow being Shem, the Asiatic people. You got the white representing Japheth, the European people. And it's the amalgamation, the boiling pot that we see America is. That makes sense. I was looking at the four wings and I was like, why is it four wings? I mean, okay, I get if for each head there's a pair of wings, but there's not. That would mean there was 8 wings. And it's like, okay, there's 1 wing per head. Okay, maybe. But then I was thinking of America, how they don't just use aeroplanes with 2 wings. Really known for the agile that they have with the helicopters and the different helicopters that America uses, which use 4 propellers. I was like, okay, that could be what's being talked about there. And now it's quick and goes all over the world, as not Greece, the leopard is said to be given dominion, and we see America has been given dominion. It's losing it now, but for the longest time has had it, and could just travel all over the world very quickly, more quickly than any of the other nations, to impose its will. And then you may be saying, why the 4 heads? And I was like, yeah, I don't really get the 4 heads. So I was looking at this, and I was like, huh, America, Mount Rushmore, has 4 heads. If you look at this nation, you could think, oh, look at it, it's 4-headed, right? And I was wondering why these 4 presidents. And I came across this site, and it mentions real briefly, George Washington, supposedly the first president, and he fought the Revolutionary War, and led to the victory. Thomas Jefferson got the Louisiana Purchase and was a author of the Declaration of Independence. Theodore Roosevelt, said to have helped construct the Panama Canal and led the country as it prospered. And Abraham Lincoln kept the country together in great division of the Civil War. And then when I kept going, I was looking here, and you'll notice the different presidents, they'll name what what they are, such as a Democrat, Republican. And when you look here, all the way towards the end and close to the beginning, all you're going to see is Democrat, Republican. But in the beginning, there was also 2 others, 2 other groups, 2 other parties here, the Federalists and the Whig. So there was 4 groups that were presidents, 4 different parties: Federalist, Whig, Democrat, Republican. So again, you can see the reference to 4 heads. I was like, okay, a whole lot of this fits. A whole lot of this fits to the United States. But then what about this next beast? Well, in Daniel chapter 12, not chapter 12, chapter 2, my bad, and we read about that statue, when it comes down to the end, it's iron mixed with clay, right? And you could say, okay, well, that's Rome, United States, what's the clay? Well, when we read Isaiah and Jeremiah, we read about how Israel, the Hebrews, the Jews, are clay in God's hands. He's the potter, they're the clay, and he can mold them as he sees fit. But they are kind of rebellious and fight against his molding. So we see that the clay, as it's depicted in the statue in Daniel chapter 2, is hardened. It's baked clay and it's miry, as in it's dirty. So it's a sinful, rebellious, hard-hearted Israel mixed with this Roman United States kind of amalgamation here. But there's something else that is said in Daniel chapter 2 about the iron and clay. It says that the iron and clay will mix, but they won't quite cleave together. And it says, and they shall mingle with the seed of men. What is that reference to? Well, it's in reference to what Jesus says about the end. He says it's going to be like in the days of Noah. And this creature is not something God made. This is not something that is from earth necessarily. It's a mixture of these beasts. As we go to Revelation chapter 13, you read about this seven-headed beast. And how many heads do we have here? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This seven-headed beast in Revelation chapter 13 is an amalgamation of these beasts. As it says, it has a mouth of a lion, the body of a leopard, the feet of a bear. And the dragon gives its power to it. Right? And that beast has 7 heads, it has 10 horns. So maybe on one of its heads it has all 10 of the horns. Not sure. But with this whole they mixing with the seed of men in the days of Noah, that's what was going on. The sons of God, which in the Old Testament is a reference to the angels and only to the angels, they saw the daughters of man and they took them to be wives. And they brought forth children, which are a mixture of the angel and man. So we see that it's going to be like in the days of Noah, coming to Daniel with the iron and clay mixing together. That's the same thing happening again. There's nothing new under the sun. What has been done will be done. Ecclesiastes 1:9. It's actually will be done again. Right? Everything just on repeat. You can know what is going to happen by what has happened. And, excuse me. So we can see here that this is probably where something comes down. When this beast comes, the church is most likely not here. Because this beast is of the fallen angels. It's the fallen angels mixing with mankind. And when this happens, the church has to be gone because the church has authority over the fallen angels. So they can't show up. That's why they're not doing anything right now. They have to use people, our fellow man, to do anything because they can't do it themselves. But when the church is gone, they don't have to work through the people anymore. They can show up themselves, which they'll probably show up in the form of aliens. Because if they just said, oh yeah, we're fallen angels, people might wake up and reject them. But if they say, oh, we're aliens, we're here to help you and save you from yourself with this world war and all this destruction you've been causing, we come to bring peace. And it's with this peace that they come to actually destroy. The Antichrist is said to destroy many with peace. And I believe when he comes, he's going to try to establish Israel as the head of nations. And that's going to be the headquarters of the New World Order, Jerusalem. And it's going to get everybody who's waking up realizing there is a God because of the rapture, and that he's the God of the Bible, the Christian God, the Jewish God. He's going to try to divert all that attention from you waking up and realizing what's going on to thinking that he is that God, so that you come and you worship him and you follow him and you listen to him. But it's all obviously a trick, a deception. And yeah. So when we read in Revelation, such as in chapter 13, we read about the beast coming up out of the sea, which is where I think the fallen angels actually come from, is out of the sea. And anyway, it has 7 heads and 10 horns, and this is where it talks about how it has a lion, leopard, bear amalgamation, a chimera. And yeah, when we continue and look at this in Revelation chapter 17, it says that the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh he must continue a short space. Now, my depiction of these heads is different, because these heads, I would say, is the spirit behind the kingdom. So like England has a monarchy with 1 spiritual head behind it influencing its kings and queens. And there's a different type of government for Russia. And such as in America, there was 4 different parties, spiritual entities behind whoever was actually there, such as a Democrat, Republican, Federalist, Whig, right? And then here is the spirit behind this other kingdom. This is going to be the spirit of Satan, or Lucifer. And this final kingdom is a mixture of these spirits behind all of them are joined together. So we can see a new world order, the world coming together here as all these beasts have mingled. You know, the iron mixed with the clay, partly weak, partly strong. And Israel is again going to become the head of the nations. But all the true Jews, as we read in Revelation chapter 12, are going to escape on the wings of an eagle to Salah Petra. If you don't know what that is, go look into it. But it's where they're going to be hid and protected from the floods of the dragon. And as we read that one of the beast's heads has a deadly wound, but then it comes back. And I think that's what is being talked about here in Revelation chapter 17, where it says that these are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And that one that comes continues for a short space would be the Antichrist. He's going to continue for about 3.5 years, receive a deadly wound when he claims to be God in the 3rd Jewish temple, probably by a Jewish zealot who doesn't take kindly to this guy claiming to be God. Just my guess. And he raises from the dead. That's why it says the 8th is of the 7. And he comes out of the bottomless pit and goes into perdition. So you see, when this Antichrist fella gets assassinated or murdered, killed, however you want to look at it, he continued a short space. But the 8th is of the 7, talking about how he's revived. And it says that that beast that was, is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, shall go into perdition. That's what it says about the 8th. That's of the 7, will go into perdition. So we see that this eighth is this spiritual entity behind the seventh head here, the deadly that receives the deadly wound. Now, like I was saying, that these heads are the spiritual powers behind it. Like we read in Daniel about how Gabriel came to actually answer Daniel's prayer, but the prince of Persia, which would actually be this one, fought against him and hindered him. It wasn't the actual physical prince of Persia, the actual man. It was the spirit behind the prince of Persia. And the horns are the physical kings. So when we read about there's 10 horns and they have 10 diadems or 10 crowns, and we read about the 10 horns here, these are 10 kings that haven't received their kingdom as of yet, but they gave all their power and strength onto the beast. These are actually the physical kings that we're going to see is actually 10. So even though there's 7 spirits behind them, there's 10 physical kings, and they all give their power onto the beast. That's why Daniel chapter 7, we read about that final beast has all the horns. I know a lot of times the depiction of the beast in Revelation 13 is a 7-headed beast, and all the horns are spread out on the different heads. But it says that the 10 kings give their power onto the beast. I think it's the main one, Satan, that they're giving their power to, this final one here, who's going to be actually the son of Satan, not the son of God. He's going to be amalgamation between angel and man, and that's why he's going to be able to do some miraculous things and even raise from the dead. And yeah. So yeah, just a lot of interesting things brought up here, stuff to definitely think about. I'm checking this boat that I've just talked about for holes to see if there's just something that causes it to sink, like a Jenga tower. Is there just one little loose brick here that's going to cause it all to collapse where it doesn't quite fit? Or does it stand sturdy and strong? There's no holes, you can take the ship out to sail. So, yeah, go ahead, think about what I said. If you see anything wrong with it, feel free to say I'm wrong, even if you want to be rude about it. I'm open to hear it. But yeah, that's how I'm starting to see this a little bit more clearly, so that looking at Revelation again, when we read about this other beast that looks like a lamb, so it comes up like a lamb, I think is very reminiscent of the Roman Catholic Church, as it comes up like a lamb, so like it's Christian, but it speaks as a dragon, right? So it's not a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's not like a lion in sheep's clothing. This is a dragon in sheep's clothing. That's what the Roman Catholic Church is. And that's why it speaks with a forked tongue, where it's Babylonian, where there's just so many things that it says that it contradicts itself, such as when it talks about the imputation of God's righteousness to us that we read in Romans chapter 4, it just ignores that and says, oh, it's about infusion, where a Protestant, a Christian, would say that God's righteousness is imputed to them, but they still have their unclean nature that they have to battle with. Well, a Catholic believes in infusion, where they're infused with God's righteousness and it cleans your nature, but you still have to deal with concupiscence. And right there's that forked tongue doublespeak. Concupiscence is your dirty nature, where you naturally desire to sin and go against God. If you're being honest, you enjoy sin. That's why you have to fight against it, right? Just like if you're trying to lose weight, you enjoy eating the goodies, you have to fight yourself not to do it because you know you enjoy it, but you know it's not good for you. It's the same thing with our sinful nature. We naturally desire to go against God and to sin, but we know we ought not to, and we try to fight it. That's concupiscence, our desire to sin. So they say, oh, you still have that, but you have a clean nature. That's a contradiction, doesn't make sense. It's the same thing where they say, oh, you have to be in a state of grace to be saved. That's what you have to die in, a state of grace. Grace is unearned, undeserved favor of God. But they say that you have to work to earn the state of grace. So you see the contradiction again, where you're working for grace. Well, that means you're never going to be in a state of grace because you think you have earned it, you think you've deserved it. That's the polar opposite of grace. So you're never going to be in a state of grace because to be in a state of grace, you have to realize you haven't earned it and you can't deserve it. You can only receive it as a free gift from God. Right? So you see again that forked tongue contradiction. You see this in a lot of the teachings of the Catholic Church. It's Babylonian because it's confusion. We're not worshiping idols, we're venerating icons. Oh, my bad. I mean, it looks exactly the same, it sounds exactly the same, but I didn't know, it was quacking like a duck, walking like a duck. I didn't know it wasn't really a duck. I mean, thank God you told me that it was not really that at all. It's the opposite. What's a KCUD? Cud? It's not a duck, it's a cud. And it's just like Babylonian, right? So I'm starting to see this more to be the Catholic Church that actually helps push to form Israel as a deadly wound that is healed, because you can see that as Israel again is the deadly wound that is healed, as it's that beast nation that received a deadly wound 2,000 years ago, and that deadly wound has been healed through Europe, right? And Catholicism has a huge influence in Israel, and a lot of the Jews don't like it, but it's returning to how it was when Jesus was here, a mixture of the iron and clay with Rome and Israel, right? It's history repeating itself. There's nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1:9. What has been done will happen again, will be done. And we know that there's an actual covenant between Rome and Israel having to do with the Temple Mount. And I think one of these things where it creates this image to the beast has to do with restoring Israel to a actual monarchy, a kingdom, and fighting against the Muslims to push them off of the Temple Mount to rebuild the third temple. I think there's a whole lot to that. I've even heard strange stories about the Jews not liking what the Catholics are doing because they're digging tunnels under their churches. And some people are thinking that they're digging under the Temple Mount, and then they might cause some kind of devastation and claim it's an act of God, such as just blowing up underneath the Temple Mount to destroy the mosque, the dome of the mosque there, and to establish the third temple. But bit of speculation. But we know these things are near. And I know a lot of people are talking about the rapture, and they're getting excited. Well, hey, when is it? When is it? When is it? I think, hey, yeah, look every day. Look especially on the feast days, on the appointed times. Yes, but we also need to be doing two other things: getting the gospel out to the world, so people may accept the gospel now and be saved. Accept that Jesus Christ has died for their sins, not just for their sins, but in their place, so that they can die and be born again as a new creature. Because it's not just that our sins condemn us to hell, but what we are. We're corrupted. We have that sinful nature where we desire to sin. We can't just contain ourselves. We have to be changed. And the way we need to be changed is by faith to come to the cross and lay our life down there and offer it up as a sacrifice and call on Jesus to save us, so that when we give our life as a sacrifice to God, He will give us His life in exchange, and we're imputed with His righteousness so that we're saved. Our past, present, and future, our life has already been paid for. It's done. It's dead. The moment we've done this, our past, present, and future, our whole life paid for at the cross. And we've been given God's life in exchange. And since God is righteous in spite of us, we are righteous and saved no matter what. It's a done deal. We're sealed until the day of redemption. But since a lot of people aren't hearing this right now, they don't care. They think it's some kind of joke or whatever. Kind of like Lot when he's trying to tell his sons-in-law, we need to get the heck out of Dodge. They thought he was mocking and joking. So they stayed and got destroyed. So that's the other thing we need to be telling people, is that destruction's coming. Hell is coming. The world's going to change. And if you're not going to accept this grace right now, well, hey, get ready to die. If you want to save your soul, you have to give up your life. You can give it up by faith now through Jesus Christ, or you can literally give it up by suffering, being outcast from society, suffering thirst and hunger, and who knows what else, and ultimately death, so that you can save your soul. In this time, Jesus says that whoever seeks to save his life will lose it. So if you seek to take the mark of the beast so that you may buy and sell and get your clothing and shelter, you're going to lose your soul. But if you lose your life for His sake, you'll keep it onto eternal life. You're going to have the faith and the works in this time to come. Right now, you can accept Jesus' works with your faith. But this offer is going to end soon. And then you're going to have to do the faith and the works, my friends. So we need to be telling everybody that. Right? Because right now they might think it's whatever. When you're preaching the gospel, you're telling them these things. But then when we're gone, they're going to see this stuff. They're going to hear this stuff. And they're actually going to care and pay attention. And then they're going to realize what they're going to have to do. And they know it wasn't a joke. They'll know that God was with us. So you got to believe in this message by actually talking to people, writing things down, making these videos, even taking other people's videos and writings, putting them on a USB, on a flash drive, on your hard drive or your laptop, on your computers, saving that stuff, printing the stuff out, make DVDs of the stuff. Maybe you're not passing it out, but you're going to have it there, so when God takes you, people are going to see that stuff. Maybe you're not good at talking to the people. Maybe you're not good at writing. Maybe you're not good at speaking the videos, all what have you. Well, you could take something like this, what I'm saying here, download it, copy it, write it down, whatever you want to do, share it with others somehow. Whether you sharing it with them now or you have it stored up so when you're gone and people are like, hey, he was one of the ones, she was one of the ones taken. And they'll start looking at the stuff you have. Like, why? They want to know. That could be what actually saves them. So, with that being said, thanks for watching.
That fella couldn't join the church. He couldn't join the church. He couldn't get baptized. He couldn't get baptized. He woke up with God. He woke up with the devil. Are you saved? Amen. So that fella didn't take the sacraments. Didn't take the sacraments. Didn't say the rosary. Didn't say the rosary. Didn't tithe. Didn't tithe. He went to heaven. He went to hell. You saved? Great. Didn't keep the law. He didn't keep the law. He broke the commandments. He broke the commandments. He didn't keep the golden rule. He didn't keep the golden rule. He woke up in glory. He woke up in the pit. Are you saved? You're saved. If you're not saved, you're over here or you're over here. You sure ain't in the middle. He said, Lord, remember me, thou comest thy kingdom. And Jesus turned to him and said, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be saved. Just like that. You have been saved? If you ever saved, you were saved like that.